just taking the whole desktop. If you're used to Windows or Mac, graphic interface, which is mostly intuitive and powerful, Linux with using a command line is going to seem strange, I think, for other people. And even if you're fairly comfortable with Linux, if you don't use the Linux command line every day and know most of the commands you need off the top of your head, it's a struggle. A GUI, when you're looking at how you need a GUI or would use a GUI for a FileMaker server on Linux or a Clara server on Linux, you really want to be able to sort of see your files, know where they are, and manage them, and manage a few other things. You don't need all the glitz of a Mac OS desktop. So this is what Webmin looks like. When you open it, it gives you a dashboard. This is a client of mine's Clara server it's looking at. It tells you what some statistics are. It gives you some graphs about server performance and CPU levels and I/O and things like that. It just gives you about an hour or a few minutes of time here. I haven't figured out how to change the scale of these graphs. If anybody knows that, that would be good to know. So over here, you've got a few tools, which I'll talk about. The most important one for me that I use more than the others, this thing called the File Manager. And it basically, if I go to the root level of Linux, I'm going to talk about all these folders. In fact, the PDF sort of explains what all these folders do. But this is the root level of the main, well, the only disk drive in this case. And these are our operating systems folders. If you dig down into a Macintosh hard disk, you'll see some of these system folders there, because Mac OS is basically a Unix system. There's a root level folder called OPT, and that is where Clara's server lives. I can click on that and go down to server, and I can go down and find all my files and so on. I've got my root path back up to the root showing over here. So if I go into, say, the HTTP server, actually I'm going to use the Nginx server because that's the one that's running. These are the documents that are in the root folder for web access. So HTTPS root, those are the index files for the website that basically Clara sets up for you. Clara doesn't run it, it uses Nginx runs it, but Clara, when you install it, points everything to, it rearranges the where the 443 and 80 ports point to be this folder. HTTPS root. That is the root folder for the web service that Claris has set up for you. Webmin itself is not being run by Nginx. You're seeing it in a browser, but it has its own dedicated web server that's used only for this, which is handy because if you started trying to make some changes to Nginx, I'm not sure how you're supposed to say it, from here, while you're trying to use Nginx to actually look at it, you could run into problems. So this is totally self-contained. So it's any SSL certificates that are installed for FileMaker have no effect on this. But the file manager, let me go back. Where was I? File manager tools. There is a command shell that lets you execute a Linux command, and there's also a terminal sub app in here in which you can do what you would normally do on an SSH connection. But once you've logged in here, you're good to go. So one of the things that's kind of handy about this is if I go to Claris server. Let's go to, say, the data and the documents folder. I can upload a file here if I want. I can upload directly from my desktop. If I have a file here I'd like to download, for instance, I can't, that's a link, so I'm probably not going to do that, but I can download that to my downloads folder in case of Mac.
Wow.
So it's very easy to get files where you want them to move them around in the OS as well. If you want to take a file from somewhere in the Claris empire, so to speak, and move it to a different part of the operating system, you can do that. One important thing to understand, and the PDF talks about all this stuff in more detail, is how is Linux permissions and Linux ownership groups and permissions. Everything that Claris does, Claris server runs with a user ID called Claris, which doesn't have a password. That's a member of a group called Claris, which, as far as I know, Claris is the user is the only member. So if you try and set up an OS script, for instance, if you do a scheduled script to run a Linux shell command and it wants to access something outside the Claris server folder, it won't be able to do it unless you specifically, you may be able to use sudo in front of it. I'll talk, well, sudo's explained it, I won't go into it, in front of the command and make it do it. But I actually found that it was quite difficult to make scheduled scripts from the admin panel for Claris do some things I wanted to do. One thing you can set up here, if I go to the system, there's something called scheduled cron jobs. Takes a little time to load. And I have got one here called, where is it? I thought I had it here. Let me just check. I haven't. Well, I'll find it at some point. I actually created a shell script. I can find that anyway. I apologize, I had a little brain freeze here. I go back to the file manager. And go into the etc. folder. It has a subfolder called, I think it's cron D, or is it cron daily? And there's a bunch of shell scripts in here, and why can't I find the one I want? I'll come back and explain this later rather than take a lot of time trying to make it work. But I basically have a client app that runs tournaments for, it's my youth soccer app, basically. It runs tournaments, and the rosters are composed for the tournament. So this particular one was in Danbury last winter, this winter just passed. And the players attending this tournament are grouped into teams, and they're assembled into rosters. And I want to show the roster for this. I can do that, and it comes up in a web browser. It's actually, what happens is when you save the roster as a PDF, it puts them in a folder in the documents folder within the data folder for Claris. And then I run an hourly job that copies those and synchronizes those with the folder actually in the web root. So I think I showed it to you. Where are we? So I actually go back and look in here and go down to Claris again. Sorry, it's the wrong opt. I beg your pardon. Accept opt. I was thinking, yeah. Sorry, it's a little slow. OPT, Claris. Server, Nginx server, HTTP docs. Go to the HTTPS root, and there is a folder here called NC rosters, which has all these PDFs. And they're completely maintained automatically. When I save them from Claris Pro client via the server, they're originally stored in a folder that Claris server has access to. Well, you can have access to via the app, that is, the application. But this cron job runs every hour and makes a copy in the webroot folder so that I can actually look at any container. I could do this with anything in a container. I can export it to somewhere I can get to with my FileMaker or Claris Pro application and run jobs at the operating system level that move them to where they can be seen in the web browser, which is something that'd be pretty difficult to do with Claris Cloud. I don't think they ever intend you to be able to do things like that. So let me just see what else I'm going to talk about. You can completely manage your users and groups for the system here. You can create new ones and assign them privileges and so on. You can also do that from the through an SSH connection. When you access this was actually big accessed using the root password, which is not necessarily something you want to do. The root account for a Ubuntu server doesn't have a password unless you set one, and that's deliberate. But it's useful to have a user with what are called pseudo privileges. That means if any Linux command you put sudo in front of it, it pretty much runs as if it was the root user, and it can do almost everything the root user can do. And I suggest you set one of those up, and that's mentioned in the PDF how to do that, and use that specifically to access Webmin. Okay. One of the things, now Webmin is designed to be installed on a clean system. So the way I've suggested doing this is you create a new server, you install Webmin on it, and then you subsequently install Claris or FileMaker server, depending on which one you need. The way you access this, unless you create a DNS entry and create a domain specifically to use for this, is the IP address at port 10,000. And on this one, it's secure, but actually it's using a self-signed certificate that I've installed, and I'll explain about that a bit later. Sorry, it installed a self-signed certificate. That gets you the benefit that everything you upload and download, or your credentials when you log in and out, log in, obviously, are completely encrypted. And the usual, as far as I can tell, somebody may know better than me, the usual reason to not like self-signed SSL certificates is that somebody could create a website and pretend it's the website you're looking at, but actually it isn't, and it looks like it's secure, but actually it's doing other stuff. But this is your website, your server, you know what you're looking at, you're signing into it. And if in addition to setting up a self-signed certificate, you also use the Amazon, this is on Amazon Web Services, if you use their security group panel to restrict access to port 10,000 to specific machines in your office or your whole office or a subnet or whatever, that gives you additional security. I don't think you need a certificate authority issued SSL certificate. Nevertheless, it does have a routine to have to get a Let's Encrypt free SSL. The problem with that is that to prove ownership, that you can't just stick a file in the web root, because Claris has moved the web root where Webmin does not think it's going to be. But the only way I found to validate the issuance of an SSL certificate, validate ownership, is to put a text record in your DNS. If you have a DNS server that has DNS setup that has a domain name for this site, for Webmin here, and you put a text record in there to validate ownership. The problem with Let's Encrypt is those certificates are meant to auto renew every 60 days, or is it maybe 90? I think it's 60. And you have to put in a new text record every time it renews. So the auto renew thing is not going to work very well. If you do have use something like Cloudflare for DNS, which has an API, there is a way to set up automatic renewal that uses the Cloudflare API to insert the text record you need to validate. All of which is pretty complicated, and I think I'm good enough with what I've set up here. Okay, cron jobs, ODBC, let me just go there. This is something that if you're using SS, you're going to want to be able to install ODBC drivers. I can't remember whether Claris Cloud lets you do that, or FileMaker Cloud. I think it does, doesn't it? I'm not sure. But if I go back here and go into File Manager, etc., there is next page. ODBC data sources, it's in the ETC, which does not stand for etc. actually. Now that's empty. Why is that it? I think I know why. I just want to go down to work backwards from the bottom. There's two files, ODBC INI and ODB instant, or stands for the instances. If I took this and I just view it, it has specifications for each driver I'm going to use. I'm using the Unicode, the Oracle ODBC 8.0 Unicode driver that they provide for MySQL here. And here I got the usual things you put in, an ODBC admin panel, what the default user is and password, which port, what database you want to access. That's all that's needed for MySQL. And you'll notice that the driver is this one. And this is the name of the DNS name, select online in this case. And if I go into the second one, the other file basically, which is this one, view that, I can find it names that driver, and by that little heading with the square bracket says this is where that driver is stored. And it's not very complicated actually. And
did you install these servers or these drivers, or were they did it come pre-installed?
They don't come pre-installed. No, you have to download them and find them. So now there are some commands to design to install that you just run, and you go to a repository, get the software, downloads it and puts all the pieces in the right place. I found that hard to get using. If you download the package and then delve inside the package, you will find the actual driver file, which ends in .so. If anybody knows more about this than me, by the way, feel free to dip in and amplify this. So I simply found, basically put it where these things usually go, which is in this case there, that directory, and then simply edit this to make it find it, and edit the other one to look here for that driver. And it's I found that quicker than trying to make the line command work to do it. But again, you need to know that if you're going to use any ESS sources. So let me go. Any questions so far?
Nope.
Okay. Again, let me just look at. Let me go back to. Oh, sorry. Here, Claris. If I look at this, I can look at the permissions here. Where was I? Sorry. I look at this. Sorry. It's opening it. I didn't want to do that. Well, I'll just go to the data folder and look at the backups folder. If I right click on this, I can see properties, and it will tell me that the where it is, the directory, and so on, and it'll tell me what the attributes are in terms of, and again, what this little coding, the 0755, that's explained in the PDF, and if I think I can do this, I can change the permissions here, and you'll see that the you can edit them there, and I think I can change the ownership as well, and you can see that it's owned by Claris, and the group name is Claris. Almost everything in the Claris folder has those ownerships and group memberships. You know, that setting. Outside, it doesn't. So as soon as you ask Claris to go outside its own little empire, it won't be able to do it. So, but you can go anywhere and give Claris, the Claris user, permission, or include Claris also in another group that has permission to access something somewhere else, which is kind of handy. But specifically, we go to databases. All your container data, if you use external storage, is in here. So like soccer players, player documents, so player photo, etc., etc. And if you simply upload them, even uploading them with Webmin, they won't have the permissions. The permissions they'll have will be probably what they had last time you had them on your computer, and I don't know. You probably would have downloaded them from, say, a FileMaker server installation, and then uploaded from there to a Claris server installation. And you need to be able to, let's go up a little bit. Excuse me. If I want to go into this folder, for example, and I want to suppose I uploaded that and it had the wrong permissions and ownership. I can change the ownership, and there's the ability to make this recursive. So you say what user, what group, and then it'll recursively ripple all the way down. So you don't have to do this for one file at a time. So let me do this. This is the PDF I've written up, and I sort of added more and more to it as I figured out how to do it. One thing I just should mention: when you install a Claris server or FileMaker server, for that matter, on Linux, it takes over. It takes over the web service sort of addressing and changes the home folder. It also closes down the firewall settings that are already there, installs something called Firewall D instead, a different firewall tool, and then only opens up ports that Claris server needs. It doesn't occur that you might want to. So that means that port 10,000 will suddenly be unavailable. And the only way to do that, and so you can't install Claris server using the terminal in Webmin, because as soon as it gets to that point, you'll lose your connection. It might keep running, but there's no way to monitor it. So you do have to install Clara server using the terminal, unfortunately. But it does run okay, and that's all detailed here. This document has some basic information about Unix permissions and so on. And it explains roughly what these root level directories are about, because you keep seeing them and you always wonder I wonder what that means. At least I do. And explains what a Linux repository is, which is, and it's been this way on Unix forever, as far as I know. Software packages that you might want to install are available in a repository, which is designed to be downloaded with a Linux command called get, which you supply URL and information, and it downloads the installment package and another package called APT, I'm sorry, will then run that package and install it. It's something you're not used to doing this with a line command on the Mac. You just, it's doing the same thing underneath probably, but that's how that's done. And then I've given step-by-step instructions with screenshots all the way through. This thing runs to about 20 pages, 26 actually. But honestly, once you've gone through this once, it'll be much easier to do. And in these screenshots, which I've shown, they're not screenshots, I've actually pasted in the text. Everything you're going to need to paste in, for example, or this, to paste into the terminal, is in red, so you can just easily find it and copy it as you work through. So I think I'll stop there. That's about it, I think. Anybody else has any comments or suggestions? Oh, one thing, I have run through this several times, step by step, through this routine, and it's worked so far every time. You do need to completely stop the server cold and restart it after installing Clara server. Just doing a reboot on the AWS panel will not suffice, and took me a while to figure that out, and a few other things. But I call it a draft because I haven't tested it enough, but I'd be grateful if somebody feels like just following these instructions and seeing if there's anything that's not clear or doesn't work the way I think it should. So I'd like to publish this, but it needs a bit more testing before I do that.
Yeah, Oliver, I think we definitely love to be guinea pigs on that. So if you send that over to me, I'll have the QA.
Well, I'll send it to the whole group, just but it does say draft, so
okay,
yeah, that'd be great. Yeah.
Sounds good. Besides the needing to stop the server cold, are there any other gotchas that you found through the process?
Well, I couldn't figure out, I mean, it was obvious when I knew the answer. A lot of these things are obvious when you know the answer, but not at all when you don't. That if you try and, I tried to install FileMaker because I didn't realize what Clara server install was doing to the firewall because it's not documented. And I actually got a Linux guy on Upwork to help me figure that out. And what it suggests here, AWS provides pretty good firewall protection. So I suggest here, there's a command I do at the end, I think it's almost the last thing. Yeah, disable the firewall here on Linux because Amazon does that for you. And just as when on Windows servers, I've always disabled the Windows firewall because it's so complicated to figure out. To me, it is anyway. And the Amazon security groups are pretty good. So I think all the other gotchas I've covered here.
Cool. Another question I had with the cron jobs. Do you have like a scheduled process that the server just runs?
I have one cron job that the server runs that renames the the event log file at midnight every night and adds a timestamp to it, so that an event log file's only got 1 day in it. So that's done from the just as a scheduled OS job from the Claris server admin panel.
Oh, so you do that through Claris?
I did that through Claris, yeah, and it worked. So I just left it running. I found that if you don't need to look at the logs more than once a week, and then you have to wade through a week of the stuff to find what you're looking for, it's a pain. So I can show you that actually.
Do you know if there's a way to set up scheduled cron jobs through Webmin?
Yes, there is, and I did one. And I'll tell you what, if somebody else wants to talk about something else, I'll find out where that is, and I'll come back and show you that. Would that be a deal?
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay, so I will stop sharing my screen, and I'll tell you when I'm ready to come back.
Okay. Is there anything else that anybody wanted to chat about, either about what Oliver had going on, or just anything else?
Paul Davis, I was curious as to how you get your plugins in there, or do you?
Oh, I think you can install those with, you mean the Claris Pro plugins?
No, any any plugin.
Like base elements?
Yeah, base
Oh,
element.
sorry, I mean for Claris, not something you plug into some other part of the operating system.
Right.
I've installed them using the install plugin. I think that works, and I'm not sure whether you can do that. I managed to make it work. I can't remember. I think I just used the, you can run a script, can't you, to install a plugin on the server? Somebody
Yeah.
correct
You
me.
can,
You can also upload it
yeah. Oliver, yeah.
directly using your file manager, Oliver.
That's what I was wondering. Can you just file manager it in there and
Yes.
become available?
Yes, I have done it with a few plugins like that. Yes.
Okay.
Or the other option that Oliver says, just run a script to install it server side.
Yeah, and how about the scheduled scripts?
They all work, provided you remember you have to have an extended password,
Yeah,
which is they don't hit you in the face with that, and you suddenly wonder. I mean, it's there in the fine print as far as I can see, but
where do you actually set up the script schedule, or do you have to do it through APIs and an
I
interface?
use it through well, just
There's still an admin panel or an admin.
oh, I'm sorry, I get the point of your question though. Let me just share my screen. Where do I click screen? Share screen. Here we go.
Yeah, I didn't see an admin screen there. Maybe I
Okay.
missed it.
If I go to, I'll just do a new Safari window. And just go Claris.nc soccer. Oh, that's the L out. That's what it. So you can just access the usual admin panel.
Okay, so it has its regular.
Yes, I'm sorry. I should have. I
Yeah,
didn't.
okay.
Just a good question. Yeah, you need to use this. I on Windows, I just was opening it locally on Windows all the time. Through remote desktop. So this does pretty everything you'd expect, and I'm not sure whether it deals with plugins here. I don't think it does, but maybe somebody else can.
Yeah, in connectors,
Ah,
there's the plugins.
Here we go. Yep. Good. Thank you.
enabled, disabled.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Anyway, I found my cron job. So since I'm here, I just had to look in the right place on the list. It was the last one here. This is a cron job. It's running with a root user, which means it can do anything you want. And it's just, I click on it and it says at 10 minutes past every hour, every month, every day, every blah, blah, blah. A little panel, you say, when do you want it to run? What you want, user you want to run it, whether it's active, and where the command is, which I think I showed you before. It's a shell command. And I just asked ChatGPT, how do I do a synchronization between two folders on Linux that deletes any folders in the destination folder that are not in the one you're copying from. And I'll just show that. I don't know this stuff off the top of my head. And I found something very precise and such as that, ChatGPT is pretty good at giving you something that works. Not always. ChatGPT, it's a bit like, if you imagine how it tries to approximate when it thinks it's probably right, it's very efficient at doing, or very effective at doing that. But it's like, if you run a regression model to figure out a coefficient of something, it gives you something with a margin of error. And sometimes the error is off at the end, off at the margin when it does that. One time in 20, at least, apparently. And sort of ChatGPT is kind of like that. It's sort of saying, statistically speaking, this should work. And it might be 99% right, but if you ask it something complicated, it doesn't work very well. And it certainly doesn't, but never mind that, there's another topic altogether. So that's that job. That is the directory to go to. So I think I can do this. I can just paste that in. I'm not sure. File manager. I don't think I can do that now. I thought I could paste in the directory and just go there. But it's etc. No, it's the wrong etc. Etc. D, I think. No, it's not that one.
On daily.
Yeah, it is cron daily. Yeah, if somebody knows what the same directory with period D, what that is for, I haven't figured that out yet. So where were we? Cron D, cron daily. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Okay, so I find this. I did it before, so it should be here. Daily, or is it chrono? It's chronology. I'm sorry. Yeah, there. Copy rosters. It's a shell command, and I just
View it.
view it. Oh, I can edit it if I want, but I basically took the code somebody suggested. This delete means, I can't remember what the -AV means. It's something, but it's a command called rsync, and there's a source folder which is in the documents subfolder, and a destination which is in the root web root. And it just, every hour it copies any files it finds there that are not in there, and puts them there and deletes any there that aren't in here, so to speak. I was doing this on Windows with a hard link between putting a hard link to the documents folder in the root folder for the web server. But apparently I found on Ubuntu, you can't do folder hard links. So this seemed the easiest way to make it work. So once you've done a few of these, it's not that hard. And I honestly, writing a schedule on Windows to do something, it's hard. Then probably you could put a schedule that makes it reboot the whole machine at 1 in the morning if you wanted to. I don't know for certain. Anyway, sorry, I'll stop talking. Any more things to cover? I'd be happy to throw my 2 cents.
What, once you've done the install, does everything else run normally? In other words, does a remote client log in the same way as it would have to any other client or Clara server?
You have to use the
host, that's all you have to do?
You have to, yeah, it's, I mean, I've got a, I'll just open his Claris Pro. I'll just close this file. And then I can just go, it's just, it looks just like FileMaker. And these are the files that are available here. And you just have to use a Claris ID to log in. If you want to log in with WebDirect, you have to have their special extended password, which is a royal pain. Well, it's not that much of a pain, it's just unnecessarily complicated, I think. I think they're going to work on that. I found a loophole, by the way. If you had a WebDirect app, a specific app designed to be used by WebDirect that has an auto open password, and you don't take it out of the application before you convert to Claris, it will still run on WebDirect and open with that password, even though you're supposed to only use Claris ID. And I think it's because it doesn't work for a Claris Pro file itself using the Claris Pro client, because that's able to open with the Claris account, but it knows that WebDirect can't open with that, and so somehow it defaults back to the old user you had in FileMaker Pro. I don't think it's meant to be there, but there is a case for WebDirect for anonymous users for a business-to-business site up to the collection limit you have for your server, and that's not catered for right now. And I think they're going to have to find a way to do that. And that, or not take the loophole away.
The last question I had, what has to do with APIs firing from a website, trying to, for example, add a record onto the server or fire a script on the server from the website. With I know I've been able to do that with Claris Cloud. It takes some doing to do it. It's not straightforward. Soliant came with some procedure to do that a while ago, but I never got it to work with AWS itself. Have you tried it with a Linux server?
I haven't tried that with Linux. I've mainly worked with the FileMaker URL to run a script, or the API to run a script, and that's all supported. I'm just not sure how that works with Claris IDs, though. Maybe somebody else has got more knowledge than I have about that.
For my applications, that's kind of, you got to do. It has to be there. You have to be able to enter data on a website that creates records and fires scripts on the server side.
Well, I mean, I think the data API is fully functional, so you can do it that way. But if you, otherwise, I don't know.
The problem isn't actually just sending the data; it's getting the authentication back from the server that will allow you to do anything. That I found difficult.
Are you using the data API?
Yeah, but you still have to authenticate to the server.
Yeah, I've managed to. I've had no problems getting it to work with FileMaker server. I haven't tried it with.
Okay.
I have a question about Claris Studio, though. Can you now use different colors and styles in a Claris Studio workflow screen? Or are you stuck with the gray and white or whatever?
You can, if you're up to the task, you can modify the CSS. I mean, you can. So yes, you can get the the colors to change. It's tedious, and I did find out the hard way that when they run an update, they put on Studio, at least when I tried it, my CSS got overwritten.
There's something like a child theme or something. They ought to have, I mean, they could add some themes or let you design your own themes or something like that. I hope they do, because I'm trying to get I've got a customer, these guys want to use it because every so often they want to throw up a form and collect data, and then if somebody is interested, they enter them into this system, so they're on the marketing email database. And they do that with a Wufoo form right now. And the idea is that if doing Claris Studio, I can just access that data from Claris and move it into the database.
I'm thinking of doing exactly the same thing. I have a client who's been using Wufoo, and their form has just gotten so big that Wufoo can't do it anymore. And Wufoo says, nope,
Yeah.
you have too many fields in your form, that's all. And so I was thinking of using Studio. Unfortunately, Studio doesn't work at this point with Claris Cloud.
No, are you committed? I honestly think if I would choose between Claris Cloud and AWS, my own Ubuntu server, I would use.
Yes, but you're in a position to administer that server. They have no IT guys to do that.
Okay, well, yeah, that's
outside of my bandwidth. I just don't have the time to do it for them.
Yeah, I suppose. Well, you can administer it with the panel, but if something goes wrong, right now, I think if you need to do a version update, it completely removes the old one and you run it again. It doesn't do patch updates, I think, like FileMaker server did. At least I thought it did anyway. Also, of course, trying to manage Claris Studio data with FileMaker scripting is appallingly slow.
Is that? Oh, yeah. I was wondering if that was still the case. I had heard that, a couple of months ago.
I think it's still the case. I in my MongoDB presentation, I think the one I did a couple of months ago, I gave up trying to compare how Claris Studio would compare with even FileMaker native or MySQL or MongoDB for an admin task. And it was probably 100 times slower than even native FileMaker. I was trying to search duplicates over 59,000 records. It's not what Claris Studio does at the moment. So that's what I want to ask in May. And so, when does this get real? Because what capabilities does Claris Studio really give me right now? I don't want a project management system. I can use Monday.com or Asana. I don't need that. I need to be able to build things from scratch that run fast and are very flexible. All the things we use FileMaker for. And I need to have total control of the back end and that kind of thing, and get a fast application running, which I can. The business logic for most of my clients is very utterly unique to their small business operation. And that's why FileMaker has such a great niche for small businesses of that situation. And right now, Claris Studio can do some stuff for me. I could just use a forms plugin on a WordPress site and do the same thing. And just dig the data out with ESS. It's all in MySQL and push it into FileMaker.
Yeah, I have used Claris Connect to go at MySQL on a WordPress site, and that worked just fine. It was very, very easy to set up. And I did it that way because they were using Claris Connect anyway to get Twilio, for text messaging.
Oh, well, that's a good idea. Yeah. I mean, if you know SQL, just using an ESS connection to MySQL. Pretty easy, actually.
Yeah, and Claris is definitely making improvements to Connect. I attended a NDA presentation a few weeks ago about it, and there's a number of additional connectors they're going to be adding to the plate, and then they're also looking at the existing connectors that are there and adding the capabilities so that you can do kind of everything that you would be able to do natively with the API through Connect. So that's definitely a positive development there.
Yeah, they were talking about allowing well, not just any user, but somebody who knew a little something, the ability to create their own connectors. I haven't seen any
Talked
more
about
about
that
it
as well.
recently.
That's definitely on the table as well.
Good.
Mhm.
And then
I-
obviously, you know,
I'm-
Studio.
Sorry, go ahead. I beg your pardon.
I was just gonna say, obviously, they're gonna be adding Studio, which I don't think currently you can use Claire's Connect with Studio. Obviously, they're gonna be adding that. And then just making it easier from the FileMaker side to connect to Studio. So you don't have to like write any scripting or anything. They're gonna
Mhm.
make the process easier for you.
I mean, if they could make it work as well as ESS to a SQL database works, that would be pretty useful. Or if they can make it work better, in fact. So making the refreshing and all that stuff work more smoothly would be good.
And one kind of thing that they said from a kind of reason perspective, I know for a long time they were talking about Claire's Connect as like a competitor to like the other connector tools.
Zapier. I use Zapier a lot.
And they've kind of taken back from that and said, we're looking at this to be more of a Claris focused tool. So that, you can use FileMaker, Claris, the Claris suite as like that's where they see the clientele of Claris Connect being.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. And Zapier now connects they've got 5,000 connectors on there, 5,000 different services you can connect with. And Claris is just not going to catch up with that. And
Yeah, totally.
but Zapier also does not work with Claris except in some very specific situations. If you have a locally hosted server, you can make it work.
Right.
To connect to Zapier, but Claris Cloud, for example, cannot. AWS doesn't like it. So you can get at various AWS services through Zapier, but you cannot get into a FileMaker server itself with it.
I did have another general question. Has anybody ever used a product called New Relic?
No.
It's a full stack monitoring service that lets you look for bottlenecks and slowdowns when you're working with 3 or 4 different servers sending transactions to each other. It's been recommended to me. So if a web page is accessing your database and some pages are loading incredibly slowly, or the database seems to have peaks in CPU, it can actually find exactly what the thread through several different application was that do that. Anyway, I just wondered if they would see them.
Seems like a cool tool.
Yeah, it seems to be. It has an API actually as well. You can load the raw data out of its results into FileMaker if you want.
Nice. All right.
It's about time for a drink, so.
All right. So any other questions for Oliver, or opening it back up to the floor, topics to discuss? Questions in general?
Oh, where's the PDF? Is the PDF going to be up on the .io or something?
I'm going to just send it back out to the group in response to Justin's email earlier.
Okay.
Is that all right, Justin? Yeah, I'll do it that
Yeah,
way.
yeah, perfect. That's great.
Yeah, okay.
Sounds good. So for May, we're going to be doing the group meetup. We'll send an email tomorrow, and then we'll send a few leading up to it. So everybody gets reminded. Since we're not going to meet kind of as a group here in May, thinking about our June CFDG, if anybody has any topics that they'd like for us to go over or things that they would like to present.
Well,
Um,
Claris is gonna be making a lot of announcements this coming
Yeah,
month,
that's
so
it.
let's wait and see what happens, and maybe we can discuss those things next time.
Yeah, that sounds like a plan. So
I
what
like
we'll
that,
do,
yeah.
what we'll do then is, towards the middle, end of May, I'll send a email out to the group. See if we get any feedback from anybody, or we can just decide now for June, we'll have our meetup be a kind of discussing the state of affairs for Claris.
Sounds like a plan.
Very good.
And I'm sure everybody saw, but if you didn't, they have announced the Engage for 2024. It's gonna be in February in Austin, Texas. At the Apple headquarters over there. So that should be a really cool experience. They haven't announced anything regarding hotels or pricing or any of that. They've basically just said it's going to be happening on these days here. So, you know, bookmark it. If I'll look for the link and send it to the group when I can find that.
I just sent the email out. The file's all the way at the bottom. You have to scroll down to see it.
Yeah, already got it.
Here we go. Here's the save the date. I'll send it in the chat for anybody who's interested.
Thanks.
Yeah, they didn't give us too much information. People were asking about hotels and they said, no, we're not doing that anytime soon. All right, so if that is everything, I think we can close up shop for the day. We'll see everybody on May 4th for the group meetup. That should be a really great one. It's at 3 p.m. so it's an hour earlier than we normally do ours, and I think it's on a Thursday. It's obviously a different day, but again, it's a shared event, so not very much in our control. But it should be really great, and we should all come away with that from that, learning a lot about where FileMaker and Claris are going.
Okay.
All right.
Good, thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Oliver. That was great, Oliver.
Oliver, that was terrific, and we look forward to trying it out ourselves.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.